I am here today to refute the claim that renewable energy is a safer and better solution than nuclear energy because it avoids global warming and preserves fossil fuels on Earth. My opponent's three main supporting claims are nuclear power is based on a limited resource called uranium, and the use of nuclear power creates incalculable risks that cannot be insured. 2, creating nuclear energy is more expensive and time-consuming than renewable energy. 3, the production of nuclear energy results in the destruction of natural environment and has long-term consequences. I would like to begin by stating that my opponent spends a lot of time discussing the negative impacts of nuclear energy and does not discuss the positive side to renewable energy. As stated in his main claim, renewable energy is safer and a better solution, and it avoids global warming and preserves fossil fuels on Earth. However, throughout his speech, not once does he back his ideas up with actual data or testimony. He does state, however, in his conclusion, that renewable resources of energy are an essential part of an overall strategy of sustainable development, and that there are faster, safer, and cheaper overall ways to meet our energy needs, including renewable energy sources and cogeneration technologies, which combine heat and power. But he provides absolutely no supporting facts, and he adds this in at the end as it is not an important factor in his argument. In his introduction, he states that renewable sources of energy such as biomass and solar, wind, hydro, and geothermal are all self-replenishing, clean, and currently contribute 19% of the world's energy supply. If the audience does choose to believe this unsigned piece of information, they might ask themselves, what about the other 81% of our world's energy supply? Obviously, renewable resources, based on the statistics, are not cutting it for our world today. In his first supporting claim, he states that nuclear power is based on a limited resource called uranium. Yes, he states this in his claim, but never goes on to further describe its substance or its importance. According to the World Nuclear Association, uranium is a very heavy metal element and is found commonly in the Earth's crust. It is an abundant source of concentrated energy, and although many believe that the element will soon be exhausted, it is important to know that we have technology readily available which can extend its use easily if demand requires it. Another valid point in favor of the use of uranium is that it is evenly spaced around the world and can thus help with international relations. In his second supporting claim, he states that creating nuclear energy is more expensive and time-consuming than renewable energy. He then explains that solar energy costs are significantly lower than that of nuclear costs. However, according to Shawshank with Global Web, the amount of energy generated in a nuclear plant is many times greater than that produced by other conventional means. Thus, as a country, we are spending a large amount on this energy, but it is worth the outcome because high amounts of this energy are being generated. To reflect on my earlier point about renewable resources and the lack of support by my opponent, I would like to further state that nuclear power is more advantageous than said renewable resources. Nuclear energy generation creates little to no pollution, and according to the nuclear tourist online, when compared to oil and coal, nuclear power plants need less fuel, and approximately 1 ton of uranium can yield more energy than is produced by several million tons of coal or several million barrels of oil. Some disadvantages to wind power include, but are not limited to, the limitations on non-windy areas, the need for 3 times the amount of installed generation to meet demands, and the fact that they are highly climate dependent. Hydroelectricity is very inexpensive, however, this is a highly limited source depending on water elevation. And lastly, biomasses are inefficient and can be a significant contributor to global warming because the fuel has low heat content. I do not deny that these methods are effective and useful, however, nuclear energy is more advantageous and is a good source of energy generation, or is a better source of energy generation. The primary reason nuclear energy has been brought into the public eye is the current idea that further global warming could be prevented. Something must be done soon about reducing emissions of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gas pollutants. And although nuclear power plants are initially expensive, like most people repeatedly dwell upon, running costs are relatively low. Nuclear power plants are more efficient than ever before, and new technology has made them more reliable and safer. There must be some reason these power plants have been produced by more and more nations.
All right, the main and secondary claims are labeled clearly. There's a long discussion about a lack of proof on the renewable energy, so that sounds like it's going to be a general theme that runs throughout the speech, and they're going to apply it in particular. And it does come up, it doesn't come up everywhere, but it does come up in the last sections especially, and I think that maybe you were right that it ought to be included more on some of the earlier points. When you got to the general statement, when you got to the specific criticism on renewables, the only thing that you had at this point is that there's probably a reason that it's only 19% and that 91% comes from more traditional sources. I think that that's a good place to maybe hint at what some of the limitations are so that we'll be able to contrast as you go along. The section on uranium sounds like an informative speech. I'm not sure there's any clash with what the advocates talked about. There's not really any explanation about why we're having that discussion there. Transition to the second point, there is a good piece of information there about the level of productivity of energy in nuclear plants in contrast to conventional sources. But since we haven't put up any contrasting information on the alternatives that the advocate was talking about, I think that that doesn't get you quite as far as it could have. Then you finally get to that place at the end of the speech where you do mention wind power, hydroelectric power, and biomass, and you've got some general criticisms of them. I think one of the things that you might want to do is note that all of them, in proportion to other forms of conventional energy, are particularly small. So forget just comparing it to nukes, compare it to the other forms of energy that we're reliant on, and I think that we got no discussion of solar, for instance, and I think that that would be one of those places that you could make a comparison. I think solar might be a little bit bigger than some of the biomass, at least, and maybe wind energy. The hydroelectricity is probably the one that's most widely used. The nuke safety argument at the end is okay. I don't have a problem with that. That's kind of a preemptive argument for down the road. There's way too much reading in the presentation. You're not talking to the audience, so you're basically just reading in front of the audience, and you're reading some good information, but you need to do a little bit more contrast and a little bit more attempt to try and engage the audience so that when we're contrasting what the advocate's saying with you, let's say if this was in a debate, you'd be coming across a lot more convincingly. All right, thank you.